introduce to you, no stranger to any of us, our Mayor, Julius Bloomfield.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Alison, and Shane. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here this morning. And my comment was, when I saw how many people were going to be here, I thought there's a lot of bored people in Penticton right now. So I want to thank Alison actually for recognizing that we are on the territory of these people. And before we get going into what's happening in the city, I'd like to acknowledge a few people here. Fellow councillors are here. I see Councillor Helena Conants, and Councillor Ryan Graham, and Councillor Isaac Gilbert, and I see our MLA Dan Ashton, and school board trustees Tracy Van Rees, and I know James Bellani is here somewhere. And so if I've missed anybody, I apologise, but that's all I got to see in the preamble here. So at this time of year, it's a time when we obviously look back on the past year, we see what we've done, how we did, and how we're going to move forward this year. And looking at my speech back from last year, we talked a lot about community safety, about housing and working together. And I feel confident in saying that we've had some progress. There is obviously still a lot more work to be done. And it certainly hasn't finished, but we have, I feel, made some progress. And we've built that foundation working with partners so that we can continue to move forward. Some will say we're not moving fast enough, and I tend to disagree with that. I think that when you start off, you have to lay a plan, you have to know what you're doing, and then it takes time to bring everybody together and implement a plan. And I always liken a city to a ship, and a ship's going on the ocean, and all the passengers on the ship are the citizens of the city, and it goes along in a certain direction, and if you want to turn it around, you can't turn a ship around quickly. It has to be a slow process to turn around before you can go full steam ahead. So we've been doing that maneuvering and getting ourselves ready to move in full steam ahead. So on community safety, we're seeing positive trends down in crime stats, and that's crimes of opportunity, I would suggest. The things like car thefts, bicycle thefts, PEDs, thefts from cars, etc. And we've also seen a substantial decline in the number of overdose deaths. And our social development team has been consistently working with the community to divide up $1 million in federal funds that have been made available to stop youth violence. And they've been doing that by connecting youth to the land, school peers and community. And it involves the Penticton Friendship Centre, the YMCA, the Youth Crime Prevention Peers operated by the Fan Grid, and our Community Safety Officers team. And on the crime front again, we are excited to announce that our Car 40 program is starting, I believe, next week. And this is a process where we have mental health workers going out on wellness checks with the RCMP. And I think that this is it's going to be a major step forward in dealing with the social issues that we have out there. We've advocated for this for a long time, and in fact, we first brought this motion to UBCM 2 years ago. And but with consistent and a pragmatic approach to the problem and dealing with the ministers involved, and laying out the need, then we have finally got that program here, and it's a program that has normally been kept to the larger centres, so we're one of the smaller cities that have that program. There are other steps forward, and But some of the changes in 2023 came in new leaders within the city. We have a new chief superintendent, Bethany Candy. And we have a new fire chief in Chief Larson. I'm not sure if he's here, but and these are leaders that have been brought into the city, and they have a vast range of experience in other centres, and they're going to be bringing their expertise to continue dealing with some of the issues that we have in the city. And to ensure that everybody is pulling in the same direction as far as social issues, we have hired a new director of public safety, and that is Julie Check. And she previously worked for the provincial government, and she's decided to make Penticton a home with her 2 children. And she's going to be starting here fairly soon. So these are the steps that we've been taking so far. These are the steps that were recommended out of our community safety report that we commissioned some 18 months ago now, maybe 2 years ago, 18 months ago. And we received a report last year, and we've been working on the recommendations of that report for most of the year. We need to deal with the issues in front of us, which we have been doing, but we also need to deal with the challenges that we don't see, the issues that create the social issues that we have in the city right now. And the question we ask ourselves is, what can we do to help people sliding into homelessness? Can we support community agencies in securing funding from the province, particularly around mental health and addiction? What can we do to support initiatives that reduce crime? To do that, we need to act in a proactive manner. We can't work in silos. Working in silos with each department working independently on their particular problem. And that's a reactionary process. And in order to really have a thorough answer to the social problems, we need to work in a collaborative manner, we need to work in a proactive manner, with all of those different departments working together. And for our part, we'll continue our advocacy to the province to provide housing and facilities to help those caught up in the mental health crisis. A safe and resilient Penticton is one of Council's top priorities, and that work will not stop. Public safety isn't the only place we saw change in terms of city leadership. With the promotion of Anthony Haddad to our CAO position, a little bit more about that later, and we did some restructuring to enhance our ability to deliver council priorities. Kelsey Johnson, who works at the city, Kelsey, she is our new Community Services Director, and it's great to see homegrown talent coming up through the organisation and getting roles in the senior leadership team. It's they can hit the ground running, they know the problems, they know the answers, they know the people involved, and we know that's going to be a really smooth and exciting transition. There was another change. As social development and bylaw moved out, economic development moved into development services. So with the hiring of the Director of Protective Services, Director of Community Safety, we had economic development move into the Development Services Department, creating some synergies as we deal with the good and bad of growth. And Blake Clavin, as the Director of Development Services, he's going to be a man for economic development. And that brings us to housing, one of our other top priorities. As business people, you're all aware of the challenges of attracting workers and retaining staff due to housing crunch. Our housing needs assessment report was blunt. We need a lot more housing. We all recognise that Penticton is a tremendous place to live, and others are finding that out as well. Our community was voted one of the most livable cities in Canada, and even on the U-Haul ranking, U-Haul rated Penticton number 6 on the growth index, which was measured by the amount of one-way traffic for the trailers coming into, where they're getting delivered to. So they know a lot of people are coming here that aren't moving out. So how do we still maintain the charm that makes us unique? Well, what I can say is that as a city council, we control the things that we can control. We don't control the things we can't control. So we have to focus on what we can control. And last year we struck a task force with a clear objective and deadlines, and they delivered. The official Community Plan Housing Task Force made 18 recommendations on how we can make housing more attainable and accessible. Some of the ideas are going to challenge the perception of who we have been and what we will become. Recommendations such as lifting the height restrictions in downtown and on Lakeshore Drive, reviewing parking regulations, developing a social housing plan, expanding mixed-use designations. Council accepted the recommendations, and now staff are working to bring them to reality in the OCP. The OCP is going to get further review. It's been forced upon us by provincial changes to our housing bylaws and policies, and that's going to create an awful lot of work for not only staff but also for the LCP task force and for council this coming year. So during that process, there's going to be a lot of reaching out to the community for input and feedback on the OCP. You are going to have your say. There will be full public engagement process. And that's important because under the new guidelines from the provincial government, the ability to have public hearings on rezoning applications will not happen. That's a directive from the provincial government. So it is vitally important that we have full public engagement on the OCP process, because the OCP is going to be the document that is going to be followed. We all know that changes need to be made to meet growth expectations. But we also are now dealing with those new rules brought in by the provincial government. So the provincial government rules, such as allowing for fourplexes on single-family sites, development along major transit routes, removal of public hearings, and the tighter controls on short-term rentals. Those are things that we can't control. We can't control that change is coming. We can control how it happens. So it comes back to controlling the things that we can. We know that housing starts were down last year, but there's a variety of factors in play there. From interest rates to seeing how the new rules play out, and the general economic trends around the country. Again, things that we can't necessarily control, but we can control how we react when the market lifts up again. We are still seeing investors who want to come here and want to work with us. And the new development on Government Street, proposed development on Government Street across from the hospital, is an example of that. And thanks to the work of the OCP Housing Task Force, we're well ahead of the game compared to many other communities in the province when it comes to dealing with these new regulations. Another thing that we can control is what do we do with the city-owned land? We've got an inventory that's put together now, and we will look at ways to work with partners to create affordable housing on those city lands. Work continues on the new public safety building and the opportunity it presents to add to the housing mix in Penticton. And I want you to know that this council is committed to continuing our strong advocacy for the improvements to facilities and the services that we deserve. But we'll also take initiatives wherever we can. We won't just be sitting back and hoping. We will be a council that sees action taken. I don't want to do all the talking, so I want to hear from you as well. But first, I want to talk a little bit about community, because that's what's brought many of us here together. That's what we're all concerned about. And sometimes we get lost in the day-to-day so much, the mechanics of governing, that we kind of sometimes lose track. But the community is at our heart and it needs attention. And I was thrilled to see last month the crowds on Magic on Main Street and the lights, and the feedback that we've got from that has been astounding. And that was done in partnership with the Downtown Penticton Business Improvement Area, and we thank them for that. And I'm also looking forward to this weekend as we host the PCHL All-Star Game, and then we have the first ever Frost Fest. So I know Kelsey's working hard on that. And it's events like that, and seeing the people coming out to those events and the joy that we see the people on the people's faces, that's what makes us do what we do. It's about making Penticton vibrant and healthy and leaving it a little better for the ones to follow. The last 12 months have been a year of change, including the hiring of a new city manager, Anthony Haddad, as I mentioned earlier. And we're excited about this appointment. Like all of us, Mr. Haddad has chosen to make Penticton his home. He did try leaving a couple of times, but we dragged him back. He begged to come back, really. And he understands, as does council, that we have something special here. Now, when we deal with the city as a council, we're not going to get everything right. We're not going to get it always right. And there's going to be times that you disagree with what we do. And that's good. That's democracy. We have ambitions this year, and we're going to need your help to achieve them. We're going to need your advice, your investment, and your time. And events like this are vital. Events where we're able to share directly our ideas on a one-on-one basis. Like I say, they are vital to getting it right. So I'm going to stop talking, and we're going to take a quick break and let you grab a coffee, and then we're going to have a little fireside chat. Thank you.
All right. Well, we will move on to our first real question, which is a poll question. Penticton saw a lot of accomplishments in 2023, so we want to hear from you first before we ask the mayor. What accomplishment did you appreciate the most last year? Was it seeing crime and overdose rates decrease? Was it the Car 40 program finally hitting the green light after lobbying so hard? Is it all the interest shown by developers that want to build more housing here in Penticton? Is it the work from the Housing Task Force and subsequent recommendations to council? Is it the seamless transition of the new city manager, fire chief, and RCMP officer in command all in the same year? Or is it transportation and infrastructure upgrades? Kristen?
Not biased at all on this.
Not biased whatsoever. So would you agree with that, Mayor? Would that be your highlight as well?
Yeah, I certainly I think that is a highlight for us because it's one of those programs that we couldn't control the implementation, so we had to lobby for it. And so you can bring about things that you can't always control. It just takes a lot of time. Like I said, this started 2 years ago. This was actually a motion from the previous council, and as Dan Ashton will witness. I mean, he was there with the with council, that day in council this day, when we were lobbying the ministers for this program, and so it's really exciting to get it because I think it's a program where we can actually target the people that really need the help the most. And so, yeah, we're very proud of it.
Fantastic. As I think the entire community is. Question that we have for you is Penticton, of course, will continue to be threatened by wildfires in the years to come, hurting tourism in our high season and also diminishing peace of mind from residents when fires get too close or reach any structures within our city. One suggestion that we heard was to create a fire guard around the city, and we're seeing that in some of the prairie provinces of cities protecting themselves. What would that look like from your point of view, and should that be something that other levels of government, should they begin funding something like that?
Fire guards around the city, that's, it's something that we've been discussing for a long time, and in certain areas I think it works really, really well. Such as the prairies, where you tend to have faster moving fires and somewhat more predictable, but in valley situations and with the amount of fuel that we've got on the ground in some of the forest areas around the cities, a fire guard itself, when we say fire guard, a lot of people think about a wide strip of bare land or something like that, but when you imagine this terrain, that's kind of, sometimes those fires can jump those guards, last year we saw a fire jump Okanagan Lake. So I think it's more a question of how forests are managed in the area, and immediately around the city there's large holdings of properties that have a lot of fuel on the ground, and so it's how can we work with those landowners to mitigate the risk of fire in those areas. And it's also, when it comes to Crown land, then that's something for First Nations to be a very active part of. And if the local First Nations are interested in forest management systems and want to have a discussion with us about that, then we'd be more than happy to have that discussion.
That's great. For those that don't know, a judge recently granted an injunction which would otherwise have seen a ban placed on consuming narcotics in public parks and near other venues that cater to children and families like swimming pools and such. How might that injunction affect Penticton, and what can be done to strike a balance between overdose detection versus safety for the general public?
Yeah, this injunction happened over the Christmas period, and it received quite a bit of attention. And the thing about Penticton is that we actually had our own bylaw which said pretty much the same thing, and we've been working with that bylaw last year. So that bylaw came in at the beginning of 2023, and I think that bylaw is one of the prime reasons that we saw a reduction in overdose deaths and in the crime stats that we saw. So if we don't, if the province doesn't enact their bylaw because of their laws because of the injunction, then we can revert back to the bylaw and have our bylaws and CSO officers deal with those situations. And so I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of change for Penticton.
Great to know. Another great thing is seeing all the new things happening in Penticton during the low season. Traditionally, this is where we hunker down and somewhat hibernate. But we saw the Christmas light tunnel introduced this year, and that helped create so many great photos and memories for families and people alike, and bringing visitors from other Okanagan cities and beyond down just to have their picture taken in that tunnel. And we have Frost Fest making its introduction tomorrow in Gyro Park. Is this the start of a seasonal initiative that we can expect to see grow over the next few years? No pressure on Kelsey.
Wow. Events like, events like that, the Tunnel of Lights, and I'm sure we're going to see the same thing with Frost Fest. When we see kids laughing, running around, when we see people smiling, that makes council smile. When council smiles, staff feel good, and I am sure that there will be more attention paid to enhancing and improving those events and building on that in the future.
Fantastic. As a side note, I've never seen Councillor Graham not smile. Just saying. Next up, we have a poll question for you. Look at that cue. Do you all believe that the 201 Forest Service Road should be ... made into a permanent alternate route to Kelowna, only be maintained when Highway 97 is closed or significantly impacted by landslide, or be secondary to other measures such as water taxis? And of course, we've all experienced the two separate landslides that block the highway going north to West Kelowna this past year, as well as previous landslides in other years, which of course significantly affects businesses getting their products to shelves and services. Also affects residents may need to go to Kelowna for healthcare reasons or other appointments. And of course, being with the chamber, nobody leaves Penticton to shop anywhere else, because we all believe in shopping local, but there is a bigger hospital up there, so we understand that people might need to go to YLW or KGH. So, without further ado, I take it everybody's voted. Yes? All right, let's see what everybody said. I think they agree with our MLA, Dan Ashton, to make this a permanent route to Kelowna. What do you say to that?
That's a provincial responsibility. but it's one that greatly affects our community, and so we'd love to be an active part in making that a reality. What we do have to consider is that, or the province has to consider, and we acknowledge that they have to consider, is the cost of turning that into a fully usable highway and maintaining it as a fully usable highway. But there are options to doing that. It can be upgraded to some kind of highway standard. Does it have to be plowed every winter, all through the winter? There's highways down in the States where they have mountain highways like Highway 20 that goes from Omak through to the west coast, and they don't plow that in the winter, so it's a lower cost to maintain that highway. So there'll be an answer there somewhere, but we do need a relief road for sure.
Thank you. I know you touched on this a little bit in your speech, but certainly worthy of revisiting. What is or can the city do to make sure that we have enough housing and shelter space so that people who cannot afford rent or may be experiencing homelessness aren't forced into tent living, other than those who choose to?
So it's about working with the different service providers in the city. It's about working with the provincial government, federal governments, and ensuring that the right types of housing get built. There's a continuum to housing, so shelter housing should be just that, should be a shelter, short-term shelter. We've got people living in the shelter for 2 years now. They need to be moving on to recovery housing, or if they're not needing recovery, then moving into subsidized housing. And right now we need a subsidized housing model. So there's all these different types of housing that we need. We've got bits and pieces. We don't have a full deck of necessary housing.
That's a very fair answer, I would say. And it's tough, as everybody knows. There's no simple silver bullet for this problem, and it's going to be years in the making for a solution. But it's really nice to hear that the thumb is on the pulse.
We've already started that. We're looking hard for that, and we will continue to do so.
Great. You mentioned in your speech as well that housing starts are showing signs of slowing rather than significantly increasing. And this goes throughout the province and country. What do you believe could be done across all levels of government to increase production?
There's the greater economy that the federal government needs to deal with. I mean, that they deal with, and then there's what the bank rates are, and the interest rates. I mean, those are issues for people who have much higher income levels and a few more brain cells than we have, and so I think that we let them sort that out. We deal with what we can control. And what we can control is having a city and an organization that responds immediately. When somebody wants to come along and build housing, then we get that done. And we help them get that done. And that's the key. We need an organization that is very responsive to the needs of people that want to build, or even just people that want to add on to a house or build a carriage house or so on. It needs to be a very smooth and easy process, and that's our responsibility.
Wonderful. This question came across my email, which I thought is a pretty cool idea. We all know that many people are finding difficulty putting food on the table right now, which is clearly illustrated by all the increased food bank use that we see not only in our city, but again across the country. And we also see a continued need for those wonderful programs like the Rotary Starfish Pack and the Breakfast Club. What do you think of offering an incentive, at least from a municipal level, to those who convert their lawns or properties into gardens and donating the produce from those gardens to fill the food gap?
Sounds like a great idea, but I think from a larger perspective, there's a lot of services out in the city that are involved in food security and providing food for those that need it. And I think that if we could get a citywide strategy on food security involving all of those groups, I think that would be that's a primary goal. We've had discussions about that with various groups within the city. We're not there yet, but we're hoping that somebody's going to pick up that ball and run with it, because I think that if we have a coordinated response or a coordinated action plan for food security in the city that involves all of those volunteer groups, all of those groups that do a tremendous amount of work, if we can coordinate that, then I think we'll be getting a long way ahead in the food security problem within the city.
Perfect. That sounds encouraging. We have a poll question for all of you next. I'll admit I wrote this, and it's a little tongue-in-cheek. If you were mayor, all of you, what would you say the best thing would be about that job? Having to publicly support motions passed by council when you voted against it? Always arriving home late for dinner with your partner and landing in the doghouse? Reading all of the lovely comments that people say about you on social media? People thinking that you are solely responsible for everything about everything? Or when you divide your salary by all the hours you put in and realize that you only cost the taxpayers 89 cents an hour? Sounds like a great job you took. All right, survey says Would you agree with that answer?
People who use source one very well. Yeah, newsflash, I am not God. Probably closer to a dog than God. Arriving home late for dinner with the partner and the dog house, the dogs in our house get treated really well. So actually, that's not such a bad thing. And I was late home for dinner the other night, and there was a note left on the kitchen table, and it said, "Your dinner's still warm. It's in the dog." But I agree with all of this.
Council just voted to request the provincial government to exempt Penticton from the new short-term rental regulations that only allow primary residents from being rented out as short-term rentals. What is it that makes Penticton unique from other cities, and what do you think this new law will have on tourism, or what impact do you think this new law will have on tourism and our local economy?
So the short-term rental question is top of mind for a lot of people right now, and so what we've gone from a business or an industry that has had very, very little regulation, and now we've got a hard-hitting regulation that's been imposed on us by the provincial government. And I can understand the rationale behind trying to control short-term rentals and their effect on housing. And we applaud actions, various actions that are to be taken. But it's also an industry that has grown up mostly with people that have abided by the rules, and now then the rules have changed, and so there's obviously some angst about that. And we are a city that has strong residential neighborhoods and great residential neighborhoods, and that those residents in those neighborhoods, they don't want to see those neighborhoods changed by the use of short-term rentals. But we also have areas that are very, very strong in the tourist sector. We have a tourist economy here, and the people that come and use those short-term rentals are spending money in restaurants, bars, breweries, shops, and all of the services here, and that means a lot of jobs in the city. So our approach has been, let's have a balanced approach. Let's have a balanced look at this and see if there's a way to make it a win-win situation for a diverse economy such as Penticton. Now, Penticton, is unique in as much that not every city in BC has the same tourist factor that Penticton has. Most cities in the Okanagan do, but in BC it's a bit of a different story. And so we have to, and the opinions on this from the public are very mixed, very diverse, and that reflects in council as well. The opinions of this on council are mixed and diverse. But there was a consensus at council to send a letter to the province and to go to advocate to the province for a more balanced approach. I can understand why they want to do a hard-hitting, one-sided approach in an election year, but the fact is that I think a balance is best, and that's my personal opinion, and it's the opinion of the majority of council. But like I say, it's a very mixed reaction.
Thank you. This month has already seen criminal activity that I'm sure you've all read in the papers. We saw criminal activity at Parkhurst Chrysler, where a man was caught smashing out a vehicle windows with a crowbar. We had an employee at Free Ride Board Shop that was assaulted after refusing service to a person with what was believed to be a stolen debit card. And then the Canada Revenue Agency had 9 glass panels smashed out. Now, the city has made significant investment in public safety over the past few years, and crime rates were down year over year. but is there more that can be done at a municipal level? And if so, what could that look like?
Yeah, to be clear, the crime rates that are down, as I said before, the crime rates are down to crimes of opportunity. These aren't crimes of opportunity. These are violent crimes, and they are totally mental health related, in my opinion. And I think that will bear out. This is where the CAR 40 program will, I believe, have a great impact on what's going on in the city. The issue that we have is that, yes, we can pick these folks up, we can, get them into hospital, get them into the services that they need, but the fact is that there's not many places for them to go. In fact, within the South Okanagan, I don't think there's anywhere for them to go. And so we're advocating for those services to be here in this area so that those folks that need that help, they can get that help.
Thank you. Along the same lines, we just learned that Kamloops City Council has directed staff to tally up the costs of all the responsibilities the municipality has shouldered in lieu of the province, such as firefighters attending an increasing number of medical calls and other areas that are provincial rather than municipal in nature. That's led to higher property taxes, and in Penticton, much of that is specifically allocated to public safety, which should arguably be the responsibility of the BC government. Has there been any discussion around Penticton doing a similar report? And if so, would there be a push for some type of reimbursement from the province?
Short answer is yes, there has been talk about a similar report, but getting that kind of report done can be expensive. And what are the chances of success? What's the end goal? If you want to get a check from the government on the costs that the city faces by providing services that the province should be providing, that's going to be difficult. I think that we can take some of the data that is found and lobby the government in a way that says, if we are providing some of these services that the province should be providing, then how about you divvy up the taxes that the province collects to provide these services and divvy that up on a pro rata basis amongst the municipalities in the province, and have it more as a policy rather than a one-off check writing event. I think that is, and that idea is not new. That idea has been pushed around UBCM for a while now, but that idea is growing momentum as these services are being downloaded onto the municipalities.
Good. We'll keep our ears open for progress on that. We just saw Kelowna and Vernon city councillors express frustration regarding Bill 44 earlier this month, which eliminates public hearings over new developments so long as the development is consistent with the official community plan. The intention is to speed up approvals and also limit the amount of NIMBYism public hearings often bring out, but it also takes away the voice of the people. So we want to hear from you in our next Slido poll. Do you support this change by the provincial government? And I may have slipped in a NIMBY answer as D. All right, Terry, survey says. And would you agree with that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, and I think that what we're facing here is that with these changes, as I said before, and I'll be saying again, and you'll get bored of hearing this, but the changes to the OCP is going to become a very important document, more important than it is now. And because people are going to be able to rezone without having that public hearing, and as long as the property falls within the purview of the OCP. And And I think that so what's going to happen is that the public engagement process that we have for the revision to the OCP has to be robust. We are going to be dealing with all of those public hearings for all of the developments over the next 5 years. We're going to be hearing from those this year. And so I think that is what council has to deal with. And it's going to be a year of hard work, that's for sure, for staff and for council. But it's a bold move, and they've, has been tried in other areas and other countries, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in BC.
Sounds good. On January 10th, and this one surprised me a little bit because, of course, Site C Dam is almost complete and ready to come online. We had a report come out that BC could be at risk of not generating enough power as early as 2026. This past year, BC had to import 20% of its power, which is roughly the energy of 2 Site C dams. And with very little snow materializing this year, minus this past week, our dams may not have the water to create enough hydroelectricity. Add to that is the legislative push to electrify our vehicles and use heat pumps and electric baseboards when those heat pumps aren't able to run after -20. In light of this information, do you feel that the BC Utilities Commission should review their decision that denied an expansion of natural gas infrastructure?
The twinning of the Fortis power gas line going into the city, that was denied, I think, December 30th or something. One day before the deadline. And so I believe that Fortis are already appealing that, so I think they're going to have to review that. Because Fortis is saying that they don't have enough gas capacity in that single line to service the projected growth in the city. Now, we have to be mindful of the fact that if you build better housing, you use less energy, and that's an important piece to remember. So hopefully we can, as the old housing gets replaced with new housing stock, we may see the energy consumption, stay neutral with increased housing. And that may seem odd, but when you take into account that the water consumption of this city, the total water consumption in this city has not changed since 1980. I believe it's maybe even decreased a little, but it hasn't changed since 1980s. And that's because of the changes to agriculture, but also the changes to landscaping and the densification, because there's, you don't get quarter-acre lawns on new houses. So, if we build better housing, if we, replace the old housing that is inefficient and with, more efficient housing, that's what we can do as a community. We can't control whether the gas comes in or not. We can lobby, but there's not a definitive action that we can have sole control over. But we do have some control over how houses get built in the city. So I think that should be a focus.
That's a good answer, and that's interesting too about the water consumption. Along the same vein, given BC's potential energy shortfall, if that does happen, do you believe that Penticton will begin looking to augment our own energy supply with solar or wind technology, similar to what Summerland did with their solar project?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I have long been an advocate for renewable energy processes. I think the city is in a unique position. It's one of 5 municipalities in the province that does have its own grid. I would surely love to see renewable energy or sustainable energy processes getting implemented in Penticton. It's a process, and and in our first years, or my first year as mayor, it's we've had more pressing problems to deal with, but this is definitely it would be a move in the right direction, in my opinion. This is not a council opinion, that's just my opinion.
Fair enough. The next is a poll question for everyone. So if we look at the OCP Housing Task Force recommendations, number 8 suggests shifting from parking requirements to parking recommendations in order to incentivize housing development and encourage alternative forms of transportation. While there isn't a lot of detail in this recommendation, is the expectation that less people will own vehicles, or are we creating a future scenario where many of our side streets will essentially turn into one-ways because of so many vehicles parked on both sides? So, next slide, Terry, so that we can see it up there in case anybody needs to scan. Or maybe they're just taking pictures of us. I'm kidding. All right, let's see the results of this one. Wow.
Well, there you go.
All right, would you agree with that? Very, very narrow.
I would say that parking is going to be one of the most contentious issues in this OCP review. And, you know, we can't, the main thing to remember is that we cannot have this ad hoc approach to parking if we're going to densify the existing areas. If we want to keep the parking the way we've always had it and dealt with it, then in order to increase our population, which is there's demands on that, then we'd have to build outside of the existing residential neighborhoods, and that would be sprawl. Sprawl is expensive and it's difficult, and what sprawl does is it means everybody in those outlying areas gets in their car to drive downtown and wants somewhere to park. So either way, we're going to have to review the parking and how we deal with parking. We're going to have to look at what residential neighborhoods look like, what does the parking look like, what does traffic look like, what does densification look like, and try to predict what's the future use of vehicles. You know, what is Strata's going to do? You know, if you live in a Strata right now, you have a parking spot for your own unit. But the Stratas of the future, they may be using shared vehicles. You know, we don't know, but the common perception is, that shared vehicles may well become a thing of the future because the cost of owning a vehicle is so outrageous. And so, shared vehicles may be, and these are all factors that come into the planning decisions. Planning is very involved. It's not an easy science. If it is a science, it's a bit of art and a bit of science, right? It's a bit of trying to predict what the human psyche is going to do over the next 20 years. So, that's probably one of the most difficult pieces in planning our neighborhoods for the future.
Yeah, and we don't know yet. Really, that's the question. My theory is that Teslas will become driverless Ubers, and we just hit the app and it comes and picks us up and takes us to work. Going into a different direction, Penticton used to have a thriving nightlife. We all remember the 90s, we all remember the Blue Mule and such. Now we only have a couple of venues that are open past midnight. Some municipalities have hired a night mayor to to help businesses after dark thrive. For example, in Ottawa, the night mayor is tasked with a $160,000 budget to enhance their nightlife economy, which doesn't just focus on bar and restaurant activity, but also on leisure, live entertainment, and cultural activities. Do you feel that this is something Penticton should consider doing as well?
Yeah.
Night mayor is what they call it. Yes. Night Mayor Graham.
In Ottawa.
In Ottawa, yeah. And that's what they named it.
Well, if there's going to be a city where you're going to have a nightmare, it's going to be a lot of worries because their nightmare might become their nightmare. You know what I mean? Again, it's shifting demographics, right? I can remember, back in the 90s, we had 4 nightclubs in Penticton. We had suspect drinking establishments. We had, all sorts of. Did I say 5? Or did we go 6? Oh, anybody got more than 6 nightclubs? Any advance on 6? No. If the nightclubs didn't close because we forced them to close. They closed because of changing demographics. Today we have breweries. We got 7 breweries, and the people that drink in those breweries, most of those breweries are empty at 11 o'clock. Right? I mean, it's just changing habits, changing demographics, and it just shows that change is constant. People change, demographics change, generations change. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, but that's, we can't stop it. We can't stop the change. The city doesn't have the power to stop that, and nor should it, because then we're forcing how people live. So it's, it's moving with the change, and if there's a market for a nightclub in Penticton, one will open. And then if that does well, there's another one that will open, and then we deal with that. But I don't think we can control demographic and trends to that extent.
Great. With Penticton's image being so important to tourism, how can we keep the city clean and encourage development in vacant lots? And if council accepts the allowance of 6-story buildings in the downtown core, do you think we'll finally see those privately owned parking lots developed?
Well, yeah. When I was president of the DPA, as it was then, this was a question that we investigated at great length, and finding ways to encourage those gaps. And I used to call them the missing teeth in the smile of Penticton. That was my term for them. What I can say for this council is that we are taking a much more aggressive approach on problem properties, as was demonstrated with a house on Government Street where there was an order to take it down, and there was an appeal not to take it down, and we said no, it's coming down. The order, we stuck to the order, and that house is now gone. So we are being a lot more proactive in dealing with problem properties. Now, we were, under the OCP review, contemplating increasing heights in the downtown area, but I think that work has been done for us by the provincial government to a large extent. And so the important thing to remember, if you want to encourage development, you have to allow for that development to be viable. You have to allow regulations. You have to have regulations that allow the developments to become viable. Because if it's not viable to build on those lots, then nothing will get done. And if you limit the height to 3 stories, then obviously nothing gets done because nothing has been done. But if you allow 5, 6 stories, then that changes the picture for the viability of that site. And so that's something to consider. That's something that we will be working on this year.
Great. It would be nice to see some new buildings go up downtown. This is our last poll question for everyone. And then after this question, we'll let you on Slido present a question or vote on a question that somebody else presents for the mayor to answer. So our last question to you is, what do you think will be the toughest challenge facing Penticton over the next year? So in 2024, will it be cost of living? Will it be lack of housing? Will it be highway closures? Will it be wildfires? Or will it be crime? I purposely did not put all of you. All right, Terry, let's see those results. Lack of housing. Is that your thought as well?
Well, when you look at a lot of the problems and a lot of our top priorities, our strategic priorities for the city and for this council, the crime, the homelessness, the mental health issues, it all boils down to housing. If people have sufficient housing, it may help them not get into the situations that they get into. If they have adequate housing, the people that are working here that have affordable housing, if they don't have great paying jobs but they have necessary jobs for a community, if they have a place to live that is affordable and allows them to stay here, they will stay here. If they don't have that, they'll move somewhere else. So many of these related problems start with housing. So yes, I commend you on the answer, everybody, because housing is the key to most of the issues, and the cost of living as well. And wildfires and highway closures, we'll leave that to them. Well, he is right, whichever department he's going to.
Thank you. And last but not least, we now invite you to submit a question to his worship. We have a few up here already. Do you know, Terry, if these have been voted on as well? Are these in ranked order? We just downloaded Slido a couple days ago, so it assured me it was a very simple program to use. But I will find a way to make it really complicated. But I think we can go through these questions as they are. So first one, what is happening to streamlining permits, inspections, etc.?
Well, I did allude to that a little bit earlier, but one thing I can tell you about Penticton, in dealing with various developers that come here and they want to talk to the mayor and see what the temperature of the city's like for a development that they might want to they might be thinking about. The developers that have worked here are very, very complimentary of our planning department. They say that they work well. This delays are minimal compared to other cities. But I think that we do have a good building department, and not to say it can't be better. It can be, but we can all be better. So we all go through life running a certain percentage of our abilities, and nobody runs at 100%. Most people run at they have an average day at 50%. They have a good day at 60%. They have a really good day at 70%. An astounding day is 80%. Nobody runs at 90 or 100%. They don't get everything right all day. So, if we've got a department, any department, or ourselves as well, if we run at 70%, we're doing awesome. But there's still room for improvement. We recognize that. So,
all right. This is I love this one. Mr. Mayor, who is your favorite council? Should we do a roll call of the councilors again that are in the room?
Just say Ryan and move on.
No, I love them all.
What a fatherly answer. Yes, no favorites. The next question I think was answered. That the city is pushing for an exemption for the SGR regulations. That was brought up as a notice of motion by Councillor Conans, and that was approved by a 5-2 vote, if I remember my city council meeting minutes properly.
Yeah, we are advocating.
Yeah.
We are sending a letter to the province, and we're advocating in person as well.
Perfect. How will you deal with the growing elderly community? What incentives would you give to young families who can't afford to live here?
Well, and that does start with two things to get young families here. One is housing, and the other is daycare. And we've been working hard on the daycare question as well. We got how many units did we just open up on Edmonton Avenue? 120-ish, something like that. We've got another 80-unit expansion going on at Bugaboos in the community centre. We've been very, very active on child daycare, for young working families. We do need the housing piece to that, and that's a partnership, probable partnership with provincial government, the municipality in the city, and anybody else that, maybe even private developers that may come into the mix. That's a focus for us, but we are working on that.
Fantastic. Look at that. It just turned 9:30, and we just finished the last question. Cheryl, I want my $10 that we made it through. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for somebody that's expected to know everything about everything. Thank you all for attending. Forward.
Like I say, we usually give them a fuller, so Mr. Bingo